All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children, men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts. The trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. And the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Kampf, written by Conrad Riker, available now, links in description. The Concrete Purgatory and the Iron Ladder, a syllogistic decimation of the gynocentric cult, from the frozen streets of male disposability to the crucifixion of Eros, and why the silent, unapologetic man is the West's last hope. You look out at the smoking ruins of the West and ask, why? Why do the skyscrapers built by the iron will of your forefathers now shelter women's resource centers that sit empty and heated while a frozen veteran dies on the great outside? His only shelter the cardboard box of a system that used him for cannon fodder and discarded him like a broken tool. This is not a glitch, it is the syllogism of a suicidal culture. Major premise: a civilization that wishes to survive protects its builders and defenders. Minor premise: our gynocentric order sacrifices its builders to subsidize the feelings and failures of the fair sex. Conclusion: we are governed by a death cult. You have been betrayed by a conspiracy of lies so vast, it makes the Tower of Babel look like a lesson in structural engineering. And the first step to reclaiming your soul is admitting that the patriarchy they warned you about is the only thing that could have saved you from the chaos of the feminine imperative. You feel it in your gut every time you bite your tongue to keep the peace, don't you? You have been conditioned to view your own silence as aggression and your logic as oppression. Consider the apology trap, the modern inquisition, where you are forced to confess to sins you never committed just to appease the emotional volatility of a partner or a pink-haired HR commissar. It is a shit test on a civilizational scale. If you apologize when you're not at fault, you're not being reasonable. You're committing spiritual suicide. You are surrendering the logos, the divine reason that orders the universe, to the chaotic whims of the mob. We are going to dissect this pathology, strip the women are wonderful effect from your cortex with the scalpel of Schopenhauerian realism, and rebuild your mind into a fortress that no Marxist sob story can breach. This is not a voyage, it is a jailbreak. We shall dismantle the compulsory queerness that pathologizes your heterosexuality and brands your natural attraction to beauty as toxic predation. We will unmask the gamma bias that renders male homelessness invisible and the family courts as mechanisms of state-sponsored theft. I provide you with no roadmap for happiness, only the cold, hard clarity of the red pill. You will learn that silence is the shield of the master, that self-improvement is the only valid currency in a hypergamous market, and that the good is not a feeling, but a brutal, beautiful standard of excellence. Cast off the lies, take up the dialectic. Allow the deprogramming to commence. The indifference of the concrete, gynocentrism sacrifice of the prodigal son. I witnessed a scene the other night that perfectly encapsulates the spiritual rot of our age, a tableau of such stark, brutal indifference it would make a stone weep. A veteran, a man who once signed a blank check to his country payable in his very life, was shivering on a subway grate, trying to extract a few BTUs of warmth from the exhaust of the city below. He was invisible to the pedestrians stepping over him, a discarded human component broken by the machine. The true horror, however, lay 10 feet away, a plush, heated, government-funded women's resource center, locked tight for the night, its warmth reserved strictly for office hours and approved victims. Here is the concrete indifference of gynocentrism in a single image: a man freezing on concrete while the oppressed class enjoys heated brick and mortar privileges funded by his tax dollars. This is not a bug in the system, it is the feature. The woke death cult assigns a value of absolute zero to male life once it ceases to be useful. We are looking at the prodaimon, the true prodigal son who is not welcomed back with a feast, but left to die in the cold because he has spent his inheritance and his utility on the very society that now spits on him. This cruelty is not accidental. It is biological warfare disguised as compassion. We must dissect the women are wonderful effect, an evolutionary psychology blind spot that has been weaponized by the cultural Marxists. Nature wired our ancestors to protect the womb to ensure the tribe's survival, viewing men as disposable utilities, spears to be thrown, walls to be manned. The modern leftist regime has hacked this firmware. By framing men as oppressors and women as victims, they trigger a biological overrides in the collective consciousness, where a suffering woman is a tragedy, but a suffering man is merely a broken tool. When a man loses his job, his wife, or his mind, he loses his humanity in the eyes of the state. He is no longer a person, he is a negative externality. The gynocentric parasite cannot love the host, it can only consume it. To them, a man without utility is a corpse waiting to happen, and they are in no rush to speed the process, nor to hinder it. Look at the architectural majesty of Western civilizations past, the cathedrals, the parliaments, the monuments, compared to the festering tent cities of modern San Francisco and Los Angeles. The former were built by men operating under a transcendent duty to the good, the true, and the beautiful. The latter is the result of the rule of feelings. The media, playing their part in this farce, utilizes gamma bias to twist reality. Homeless men are vagrants, addicts, and threats who deserve contempt, while the rare homeless woman is a victim of circumstance deserving of immediate shelter. This framing is a lie. If the patriarchy were real, if men truly ruled the world for the benefit of men, would they comprise 70 to 90% of the homeless, the suicidal, and the workplace fatalities? It is a syllogism of survival. A ruling class does not populate its own gutters. Therefore, men are not the ruling class, they are the sacrificial class. This betrayal is etymological as well as physical. Consider the corruption of charity and compassion. Caritas is costly love. Compati means to suffer with. The modern state has perverted these into exclusive subsidies for the feminine. Withholding aid from men is not budgeting. It is a violation of the principle of subsidiarity and a pathological evil. The state acts as a hypergamous filter, stripping resources from the productive male class to bribe the female voting bloc. When the rule of law is replaced by the rule of feelings, we see the rise of the Me Too kangaroo courts and the destruction of due process. A man is presumed guilty because he is presumed powerful, while the actual power dynamic, a state that can freeze a man to death while funding a women's center next door, is ignored. The stoic dignity of the discarded man on the grate is the only truth left in a world of lies. The only solution is to build parallel civil society associations, male-only shelters, and mutual aid networks funded by men, for men, bypassing the hostile bureaucracy entirely. We must save ourselves, for the parasite will die only after it has consumed the last of us. This misreading of the masculine spirit is not merely ignorance, it is a tactical assault on the faculty of reason itself. The feminine imperative, terrified of the vacuum where truth sits waiting to judge, demands a constant, suffocating stream of verbal output to drown out the voice of sanity. They pathologize his silence because a man who does not speak cannot be gaslit, and a mind that remains closed to their manipulation is a fortress that cannot be breached by the emotional incontinence of the mob. The tyranny of the chatter and the sin of contrition. Silence stands as the supreme rebuke against the clamor of the crowd. The roots of the word lie in the Latin salere, signifying quietude, yet its essence originates from the Indo-European bases, to hold or rest. The masculine soul is a fortress, and quiet acts as its moat. Oppose this against the current genocentric horror, a discord of approval-seeking sound, that dreads the emptiness more than anything. For the feminine imperative and its Marxist servants, quiet is not repose. It serves as an indictment. It represents the horrifying void where their brittle stories resound as empty falsehoods. I remember an instance at a dinner gathering, a miniature model of our decline, where a male remained stoic while his partner released a flood of neurotic nonsense regarding emotional labor and unpaid work. She spoke to listen to herself. He abided in the logos, the gestating reality. Those present observed, programmed by years of poisonous popular psychology to see his tranquility as emotional blockage or toxic brooding. Such is the feminist framing of Stoicism, a falsehood intended to guilt males into unlocking the portals of their intellects. They name his stronghold seclusion. We identify it as integrity. This brings us to the dialectic of dialogue, where the Socratic method, born of the masculine desire to carve truth from stone, has been replaced by the sophistry of the therapy session. The modern feminized male is taught that he must talk it out, a phrase that should strike your ear with the same revulsion as a medical diagnosis of leprosy. Talking it out is not a search for the transcendental good. It is a demand for the imminent validation of feelings, those fleeting phantoms of the amygdala. The red-pilled man understands that conversation with a solipsistic entity is not a dialectic, but a drain. Consider the silence test. A man drives his date home. She floods the airwaves with inane chatter, terrified of the quiet. The test is his. If he rushes to fill the gap with platitudes, he fails, proving he is a slave to her comfort. If he sits unmoved, a monolith in the driver's seat, he passes. He proves he is the master of his internal state, not the servant of her anxiety. This servitude manifests most grotesquely in the apology trap, a logical snare that has claimed the souls of millions of good men. Let us dismantle it with the clarity of the trivium. The major premise, an apology is, by definition, an admission of guilt and a request for penance. The minor premise, modern gynocentric relationships, abetted by the family courts and the culture of cuckoldry, demand men apologize to maintain peace, even when they are factually innocent. The conclusion, therefore, a man who apologizes when not at fault commits spiritual suicide to appease a tyrant. It is a negation of the self. When a husband mutters, "Yes, dear," to avoid a conflict, he is not being a peacemaker. He is Neville Chamberlain, waving a piece of paper at a hunger that can never be sated. The linguistic weaponization of sorry is a masterclass in feminine warfare. The word derives from the Old English serig, meaning pained or distressed, yet today it has been transmuted into a tool of dominance. When a leftist or a woman forces a man to apologize for his nature, for his logic, or for his truths, she is not seeking reconciliation. She is demanding a public recantation of his reality. It is a struggle session worthy of the Cultural Revolution. If you apologize for being right, you surrender your agency to the mob. You validate the lie that your rationality is cruelty and that her emotional turbulence is truth. This is the peace at any price fallacy, the cowardice that precedes the fall of every civilization. A man who prioritizes peace over his pride has neither. The remedy from the Western canon is absolute and requires a courage that borders on the fanatical. We must look to the trivium's role in mastering speech. Grammar teaches us the structure of reality. Logic teaches us the consistency of truth. Rhetoric teaches us the art of persuasion. But true rhetoric knows when not to speak. The golden rule of the red pill is this: a man must speak only when his words are more beautiful than the silence. If you are not guilty, do not apologize. The statement, "I am not guilty, I will not apologize," is not an act of aggression. It is an act of amor fati, loving your fate enough to endure the conflict rather than rot in the falsehood of submission. Reframe the leftist critique. They call your silence emotional constipation. No, it is the fortress of the mind. It is the stillness before the strike. Silence is the hallmark of the master. Chatter is the hallmark of the slave. Choose your side. Silence acts as the shield, but competence serves as the sword. Having built the fortress of the mind, a man must look outward to the chaotic void and force his will upon it. The pathology of the left, rooted in a resentment of the superior, seeks to numb the male drive with the cheap dopamine of entertainment and the false virtue of moderation. This is the complacency that precedes the collapse of civilizations. However, the Western spirit recognizes that life is strife, and that the good is found not in rest, but in the perpetual conquest of one's limitations. A man who stops climbing does not merely stand still. He decays from the inside out, the iron ladder of virtue, ascending from the biological gutter. I once witnessed a quiet tragedy that illustrates the biological bankruptcy of the modern man. Consider Arthur, a soft-handed accountant who, upon securing a modest suburban castle and a wife, decided he had reached the summit. He hung up his sword, swallowed the blue-pill pabulum of happily ever after, and replaced his martial vigor with video games and craft beer. He believed the feminist lie that his value was inherent, not acquired. 5 years later, following the inevitable, irreconcilable differences, a euphemism for a woman's hypergamous boredom, Arthur was ejected from his own home by the gynocentric family courts, stripped of his assets, and reduced to a visitor in his children's lives. Contrast this with Silas, a man who, upon noticing the first signs of his wife's wandering eye, did not whine but weaponized himself. Silas mastered a high-value trade, hardened his body into iron, and diversified his resources. When the crash came, Silas didn't crumble. He thrived, ascending to a higher tier of existence while his ex-wife scrambled for crumbs. Arthur became the rubble. Silas remained the architect. The lesson here is forged in the cold fires of logic, a syllogism that would make Heraclitus weep with validation. Major premise: life is defined by motion, struggle, and the chaotic flux of becoming. Minor premise: stagnation is the cessation of motion, indistinguishable from death. Conclusion: therefore, a man who ceases to grow is actively dying. The modern world, a cesspool of cultural Marxism and toxic comfort, conspires to convince you that good enough is a virtue. It is not, it is a grave. To pause on the ladder of competence is not to rest, it is to rot. The universe does not tolerate stillness, it only rewards the ascending spirit with life, and punishes the static mass with entropy. The leftist industrial complex has pathologized this entropy by branding it a mental health crisis. They plaster the world with slogans about ending the stigma, while pumping men full of SSRIs to numb the screaming of their own souls. Let us deploy the trivium to dissect this fraud. The grammar of the situation is clear. Male depression is rarely a chemical imbalance. It is a spiritual atrophy. It is the logical result of a man denying his own telos, his purpose. The rhetoric of the therapist's office tells you to accept yourself as you are, a disgusting lie that contradicts the very essence of the male spirit. The logic dictates that if you are weak, you should not be accepted. You should be forged. Your anxiety is not a sickness. It is your biology sounding an alarm that you are insufficiently armed for the battle of existence. You are not depressed. You are unarmed. This preparation for battle was once codified in the Western tradition through the apprenticeship mastery ladder, a sacred hierarchy of competence that the equality-obsessed left seeks to demolish. Historically, a boy entered as an apprentice, submitting to discipline to learn the grammar of his craft. He became an itinerant, wandering, testing his skills against the reality of the market. Finally, he emerged as a master, creating a masterpiece that proved his virtue. This was a hierarchy based on arete, excellence, a concept alien to the participation trophy culture of the woke. The cultural Marxists demand equality of outcome because they fear the judgment of nature. They wish to flatten the pyramid because they cannot climb it. But nature abhors a flat line. It demands the hierarchy. To reject the ladder is to reject civilization itself, resigning yourself to the gray, egalitarian sludge of mediocrity. You must climb this ladder not merely for wealth, but because of the immutable biological arithmetic of the female nature, a truth Schopenhauer identified as the will to life. Women are hypergamous. They are programmed by evolution to look up. They seek the highest status male available to them. If you are not ascending, you are effectively descending in her eyes. This is not misogyny. It is the rigorous mathematics of survival encoded in DNA. When a man stops improving, he breaks the unspoken contract of attraction. He becomes invisible or worse, repulsive. The cruelty of the female is not a moral failing, but a biological failsafe. She discards the weak male, because nature demands the strongest genes. If you wish to keep your woman or attract a quality one, you must forever be the object of her gaze, looking upward at your ascent. Beware the false path of self-help consumerism, the castrated woke version of improvement that promises salvation through therapy, validation, and consumption. This is the passivity of the victim. The red pill path is one of agency. You do not heal your inner child by coddling it, you strangle it so the adult may breathe. The woke man buys a scented candle and complains about his feelings. The red-pilled man buys a kettlebell and reclaims his testosterone. One consumes, the other produces. One seeks to be coddled by the state or a therapist. The other seeks to dominate his environment through the acquisition of skills and resources. The former is the path of the slave. The latter is the path of the sovereign individual. Ultimately, the imperative of becoming is the pursuit of the transcendental of the good. The good is not a fuzzy feeling of benevolence, it is a state of excellence, a structural integrity of character and capability. To improve yourself is to actualize the divine spark stolen by the mediocrity of the herd. You are a project of nature, a cathedral of flesh and will. You must lay the bricks of discipline, mortar them with logic, and raise the spires of your competence toward the heavens. If you do not build this cathedral, you will become the quarry from which others draw their stones. You will be used, discarded, and forgotten. Build or be broken. Do not mistake Gregory's public flogging for a mere administrative error. It is a ritual sacrifice to the idols of an inverted reality. This linguistic legerdemain serves a singular diabolical purpose: to pathologize the healthy biological imperative of the male. The leftist project requires the destruction of the norm to validate the aberrant, leading us into a dystopia of compulsory queerness, where the very engine of civilization, the attraction between man and woman, is recast as a predatory disease. The crucifixion of Eros, pathologizing the pillars of civilization. Harassment is a word that has undergone a linguistic lobotomy, stripped of its objective meaning to serve as a bludgeon against the heterosexual male imperative. I recall the case of a competent engineer, let us call him Gregory, who was marched out of his office by HR, the palace eunuchs of the corporate state, for the high crime of telling a female colleague that her presentation was compelling. Not lewd, not crude, but compelling. In a sane civilization governed by the trivium and the rigors of dialectic, this would be a compliment. In the current year, it is microaggression. The word harassment derives from the old French harer, to set a dog on a hare. It is now the hysterical cry of the hare, pathologizing the very nature of the hound, demanding that the predator apologize for having teeth. We have allowed a legal and cultural framework where the biological reality of male initiative is reclassified as a crime, effectively criminalizing the good in favor of the safe, sacrificing competence on the altar of feelings. Consider the irrefutable logic of natural law regarding this cultural rot, stripped of the emotional sophistry used by cultural Marxists. Major premise: the survival of the species requires distinct sexes engaging in procreative union and the rearing of offspring. Minor premise: critical theory and modern feminism attack the reality of sex differences, pathologize heterosexuality, and dissolve the primacy of the family unit. Conclusion: therefore, critical theory is a biological weapon designed to terminate the species. This is not hyperbole. It is a syllogistic proof of civilizational suicide. By demonizing the patriarchy, which is etymologically and functionally merely the rule of the father, the logos, the ordering principle of the cosmos, the left seeks to murder the father at the metaphysical level, leaving a horde of atomized, infantilized orphans wandering the wasteland of the mixed constitution without a head. This is the compulsory queerness of the modern regime, a profound inversion of reality that would make Caligula blush. While biological reality dictates that 97% of the human population is heterosexual, the Cathedral of Woke seeks to normalize the remaining 3% into a mandatory dogma, casting the vast majority of normal, procreative coupling as predatory or toxic. It is a gamma bias, so severe it requires a total suspension of the intellect. Look at the statistics. Marriage rates are plummeting, sperm counts are dropping, and the nuclear family, that monarchy of parents and republic of children, is being dismantled brick by brick. They are not fighting for inclusion, they are waging a war of erasure against the biological bedrock of civil society associations. They take the aberration and raise it to the standard, solely to dethrone the standard, because the standard, the strong, providing logical male, reminds them of their own inadequacy. Let us be honest about the evolutionary biology driving this Marxist madness. It is a mating strategy of the weak. The leftist ideologue cannot compete in the meritocracy of the apprenticeship mastery ladder, where competence and stoicism are the currency, so they must burn the ladder down. By pathologizing toxic masculinity, a demon term if ever there was one, they attempt to domesticate the wolf into a lapdog. They attack stoicism as repression and aggression as violence, confusing the shield that protects the city with the sword that attacks it. These virtues built the walls of the city. They are the pillars of civilization. The weak seek to lower the bar so that their own lack of virtue goes unnoticed, preferring a crab bucket equality of misery over a hierarchy of excellence. They are not liberating anyone. They are castrating the protectors so they can loot the village unopposed. The only remedy for this spiritual necrosis is the unapologetic re-enshrinement of the masculine role. We must stop apologizing for our nature. We must reclaim the word patriarchy not as a slur, but as the noble structure of fatherhood and order. It is the head of the civilization, and without it, the body politic flails and dies. You want the transcendentals? Then embrace the truth. Aggression channeled is industry. Stoicism is the fortitude to build cathedrals. The male gaze is the spark of creation. Do not ask for permission to exist. Do not seek the validation of those who hate you. Reject the guilt trips of the feminist harpies and the soy-faced commissars of HR. Stand tall in the light of natural law. We are witnessing the suicide of the West, driven by a hatred of the father, and the only way to stop it is for men to once again be men, unyielding, logical, and wedded to the truth. Look at what we have done. We have dragged the festering, parasitic ideologies of cultural Marxism into the blinding, unforgiving light of the logos and watched them wither. You have survived the descent into the abyss of the modern psyche and returned not with trauma, but with the shield of amor fati and the sword of dialectic. We dissected the homelessness crisis and found it was not a housing shortage, but a spiritual eviction notice served to men by a genocentric state that values the feelings of a neurotic feminist over the frozen body of a veteran on a grate. We exposed the apology trap for what it is, a dominance ritual designed to break your spirit, a test you now pass with the silent, terrifying stoicism of a Spartan holding the line. We laughed at the absurdity of compulsory queerness, recognizing it as the biological dead end of a civilization that has forgotten how to reproduce itself. You have successfully navigated the trivium, using grammar to define the enemy, logic to dismantle their fallacies, and rhetoric to broadcast the truth. You are no longer a drone in the hive, you are a conscious actor in the grand tradition of the West. Now, take this inoculation against the woke mind virus and go forth. The leftist reality is a hallucination built on gamma bias and enforced by shaming language. Do not fear it, for their arguments dissolve upon contact with formal logic. Their lived experience cannot survive a syllogism. Their equity cannot survive arithmetic. You are the antidote to the decay. When you walk down the street and see the ruins of the mixed constitution, do not despair, build a parallel structure. When you see your brother broken by the family courts, hand him the red pill of wisdom. Live the eroded, the excellence that built the cathedrals and conquered the globe. Do not apologize, do not kneel. The Western spirit is not dead. It was merely sleeping, waiting for men like you to wake it up with a roar of defiance. You are the remedy, you are the master, and now the sponsored book, Introduction, Men Kampf. You feel it every day. The slow erosion of your dignity, the subtle sneer at your ambition, the legal and cultural boot on your throat for the crime of being a man. I wrote this book because I've lived it. I watched my brother lose his kids to a family court that treated him like a walking wallet. I buried a friend who chose a rope over another day in a world that called his pain privilege. I fought bosses who promoted unqualified women over me to hit diversity quotas, then demanded I smile while training them. This isn't paranoia, it's policy. Kampf isn't for the faint-hearted or the blue-pilled. If you still believe equality is possible or worse, desirable, close this book now, go knit a pride flag. For the rest of you, this is your survival manual. We'll dissect how schools chemically castrate boys with ADHD, meds while funneling girls into STEM, why courts strip fathers of rights but never of responsibilities, and how taxes you pay fund programs that exclude you. You'll learn why toxic masculinity is a trap designed to shame you for winning and punish you for losing, and why women's oppression conveniently nets them shorter prison sentences, affirmative action, and control over reproduction, while men die younger, work riskier jobs, and fund it all. This book is a counterattack. You'll see how feminism weaponizes evolutionary biology, women's monopoly on reproduction, to extort male labor, then labels your resistance bigotry. You'll get strategies to dodge divorce rape, bypass biased hiring, and reclaim spaces where men can speak without a HR sniper aiming at their career. Data doesn't care about feelings. Men commit suicide 3.5x more than women, contribute 70% of global taxes, and remain 97% of combat deaths. Equality? We're past that. This is about emancipation. Weak men won't survive what's coming. If you're content being a tax mule, a disposable body, or a villain in someone else's story, walk away. But if you're ready to fight, to win, turn the page. The siege ends here. Kampf, written by Konrad Riker. Buy now. Links in description.